Okay, it is Sunday the 14th of February 2016. I'm in front of the Unitarian Church of Montreal, engaged in my alternative spiritual practice of protesting against Unitarian Universalist injustices and abuses. Looks like the camera cut out on me while I was recording. It might be that I overwent the half-hour time limit and it just stopped recording, or it might be that it died because the battery got weak. But in any case, I rambled on for a bit where it wasn't recording, and I don't know what it did and did not record. So we're going to wrap this up soon anyway. I've been here for about an hour now, and I've had quite a nice little protest on the 20th anniversary of filing my letter of grievance against Reverend Ray Drennan. My letter of grievance against Reverend Ray Drennan was submitted to the board of the Unitarian Church of Montreal on February 14th of 1996. We are now February 14th of 2016. That's 20 years. 20 years of Unitarian Universalists not trying very hard to live up to what is written here on their wayside pulpit, or what I sometimes refer to as their wayward pulpit, in light of how they usually make a total mockery of what's written on it. So this is about the Truth and Reconciliation process for First Nations in Canada. And it says, reconciliation will not be one grand finite act. It will be a multitude of small acts and gestures played out between individuals, and it will be ongoing until all the wounds are healed. And essentially Unitarian Universalists are saying, we should do this in terms of the First Nations. Well, guess what? This is a general principle. This applies to any situation where reconciliation is warranted. This is, can apply to any number of other injustices and abuses, any other situations where wounds need to be healed. But guess what? Unitarian Universalists, when it comes to clergy misconduct of all kinds, do a terrible job of living up to this. They just, basically refuse to engage in small acts and gestures, moving towards reconciliation. They refuse to do the things that are necessary to heal wounds. And very often, not only do they refuse to work towards reconciliation in these ways, but they make matters worse by engaging in all kinds of behavior that just makes matters worse. Instead of working towards de-escalation of the conflict and towards healing, they actually do stupid things that escalate the conflict and prolong it. So let's come back to the French version here, which is different. Le chemin que nous parcourons revêt autant d'importance que la destination que nous cherchons à atteindre. Il n'y a pas de raccourci. Lorsqu'il s'agit de vérité et de réconciliation, nous devons parcourir toute la distance. So, in English, the path that we are on has as much importance as the destination we seek to attain. There are no shortcuts. When it comes to truth and reconciliation, we must go the whole distance. Well, unfortunately, again, Unitarian Universalists do a terrible job of going the whole distance towards truth and reconciliation. More often than not, they go the whole distance towards perverting justice to prevent actual truth and reconciliation. I think a perfect example of Unitarian Universalists going the full distance of making a total mockery of what's written here is the fact that in June of 2012, the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations in Boston had me served with a cease and desist demand letter drafted by Stikeman Elliott Barristers and Solicitors Litigation Lawyer Maitre Marc-Andre Coulombe, which falsely accused me of the criminal act of blasphemous libel for allegedly, and I do say allegedly, making unfounded and vicious allegations to the effect that ministers of the association engage in such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape. So in other words, the Unitarian Universalist Association went the full distance of falsely accusing me of the criminal act of blasphemous libel in an effort to intimidate me into removing blog posts that actually tell the truth about Reverend Mac Wallace Mitchell and Richard Buell, who were actually charged, tried, and convicted of what Stikeman Elliott Barristers and Solicitors Litigation Lawyer Maitre Marc-Andre Coulombe describes as such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape. Now, my blog posts about Reverend Mac Wallace Mitchell and Richard Buell were by no means unfounded. They were founded upon newspaper reports and other reliable sources of information that told about how they were both convicted of pedophilia and or rape. Reverend Mac Wallace Mitchell was convicted of the forcible rape and even the, in quotation marks, unnatural rape of teenage Tibetan refugees who he had lured away from their families in India with promises of a better life in America. So Reverend Mac Wallace Mitchell was convicted of raping teenage girls, vulnerable teenage girls, who were totally in his care and responsibility. Richard Buell was convicted of raping girls who were no older than 12 years old at the time that the rapes took place, and might have been as young as 6 according to some of the estimates, but certainly somewhere between 9 and 12 years old when they were raped. So this makes Richard Buell a pedophile rapist. That's the exact term that I used to describe him. Nothing unfounded about my description of Richard Buell as a pedophile rapist. And I don't think it's vicious either. It's just a clear statement of fact, based on the fact that he was convicted of these crimes. Now, I suppose it's possible that Richard Buell might have been wrongfully convicted. You never know. You know, maybe he was falsely accused, and maybe he was unjustly convicted. I kind of doubt it, but it's not impossible. But that doesn't make my allegations unfounded, unless that's shown to be the case. You know, my allegations were based on publicly available information that I had very reasonable grounds to believe was true. So nothing even remotely libelous about them, and certainly not blasphemous libel. So we're wrapping things up here. I've been protesting for quite a while, for over an hour. It's quite cold, not crazy cold, but cold enough. So we're calling it a day. But just to finish that off, in terms of the UUA's blasphemous libel accusation, you know, it's just one of a multitude of small acts and gestures, and indeed some pretty darn big acts and gestures, played out between Unitarian Universalists and yours truly, that instead of healing wounds, actually makes wounds even worse than they already are. So just a total mockery of what's written here. The exact opposite of working towards reconciliation. The exact opposite of working towards determining what the truth actually is. And it's essentially trying to hide the truth and threatening people with criminal charges and jail terms and so on, to hide the fact that the Unitarian religious community has a certain number of pedophiles and rapists in it. On that note, we're wrapping up my protest on the 20th anniversary of my grievance letter against Reverend Ray Drennan for his non-sexual clergy misconduct, which included falsely and maliciously labeling Creation Day as a cult, intolerantly and abusively labeling me psychotic, and otherwise mocking and ridiculing my theistic religious beliefs, which are entirely compatible with the claimed religious beliefs of Unitarian Universalism. There's nothing I have ever said in terms of my religious beliefs that are out of alignment with the principles and purposes of Unitarian Universalism. On the contrary, it is the behavior of Reverend Ray Drennan and numerous other Unitarian Universalists that make a total mockery of the 7 principles of Unitarian Universalism and other ideals of Unitarian Universalism. And in fact, the blasphemous libel accusation that I'm talking about is, besides being completely out of alignment with the 2nd principle of Unitarian Universalism, which calls for justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, besides being completely out of alignment with the 4th principle of Unitarian Universalism, which calls for a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, besides being completely out of alignment with several other Unitarian Universalist principles, such as working towards the goal of world peace and justice for all, etc. It is also completely out of alignment with the long-held tradition of the Unitarian and Universalist religious communities of opposing blasphemy laws. You know, for hundreds of years, Unitarians and Universalists have opposed blasphemy laws because they've often been on the wrong end of blasphemy laws because of their denial of the Trinity, in the case of the Unitarians, and so on. So Unitarians and Universalists, you know, some have actually been executed for alleged blasphemy or other, you know, theological crimes. And so it is just a total betrayal of this tradition of opposing blasphemy laws for the Reverend Peter Beyond Belief Morales UUA administration to hire Stikeman Elliott Barristers and Solicitors litigation lawyer Maitre Marc-Andre Coulombe to falsely accuse me of the criminal act of blasphemous libel in an effort to cover up and hide the fact that certain Unitarian Universalist ministers are guilty of engaging in such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape. So happy St. Valentine's Day, Peter Morales, you fucking asshole.